Good morning, everybody. This is Professor Diaz-Kozlowski, and this lecture is entitled Ending Sexism. It is in Unit 3, which is Systems of Privilege and Inequality. And so this particular lecture is going to focus on Deborah Godner's essay entitled Is She Your Bitch? Confronting Sexism on the Fly. And I added this essay to Unit 3, actually per the recommendations of my students from last semester, because they really liked it, and they also thought that you would really help. It would really help your experience as a student understand more deeply what sexism is and how it plays out on a micro level as well as on an institutional level. I hope that in reading the essay and then reviewing this particular lecture, that you'll be able to remember what sexism is, understand how it operates in systems of language, and see how when boys and men use the B word, it's normalizing sexism and reinforcing it. So in order to help you navigate these learning outcomes, I'm going to review key concepts and then introduce new vocabulary terms that Godner kind of touches on, but I want to make sure that you're clear on these vocabulary terms, and then focus on how these terms are introduced in Godner's essay in particular, in which she's really trying to clearly articulate to you that the B word is sexist, and in language, it plays a significant role in normalizing sexism itself, but also, in our case, how you can unlearn it and how we can end it. So that's what we're gonna do. So again, we have patriarchy, you have sexism, and feminism. But again, I want to reiterate to you that I think this is very important, as this particular lecture is going to focus specifically on sexism on a micro level within language, but also within educational institutions, is again, sexism is an ideology. So it's a system that supports and justifies patriarchal relations. And here's the other key piece, and I use these sort of circles as they're intersecting to try to conceptualize for you, to get your brain thinking about how these things are always happening. Sexism is operating on multiple levels all the time, specifically institutional, symbolic, the interpersonal, and in the unconscious. So again, I want you to be thinking about these things as we move through the rest of the course, and also as we move through this particular lecture. So one of the key terms, this new key term, is hegemonic or toxic masculinity. And so these are the four components of toxic masculinity. And again, once we get into Unit 4, we'll talk even more about these components. But I want to talk about them now because Godner introduces it just for a minute, and I want to make sure that you know what they are. And so the four components are the repudiation of the feminine. And so if you don't know what repudiation is, you need to stop and pause this, get your dictionary or get your dictionary app and look up the repudiation, because it's a very strong verb. It's very strong. The second is this constant competition between men, and that men cannot show emotions. The third is the sexual objectification of girls and women. And the fourth is the subordination of girls and women to men. In short, you might hear me talk about this in Unit 4 as gender subordination, but really a part of hegemonic masculinity is always making sure that there's this power relationship, that boys and men are on top and girls are subordinated. And so that's what that means. And so Godner, she demonstrates how these pieces of toxic masculinity are at work in her essay when she's writing on the chalkboard and she's doing her thing and she hears these boys use this B word about Obama and Romney, and she decides to change her lecture because she says, oh, I need to intervene. What's going on here? And she begins to sort of change her lecture and get her students to talk about how they understand the B word. What she comes to learn and what she's trying to articulate to you in this essay is that our society is just saturated with these violent and aggressive images of men in our culture. And what do these constant and violent aggressive images do? They teach boys that to understand themselves as boys and what a boy means and what it means to be a man, right, is that hegemonic masculinity is normal, and it reinforces boys and men to act violently towards girls, and also boys deemed weak or feminine. So one of the key points of this essay is that boys have to learn unlearn hegemonic masculinity, and they have to learn to use non-sexist language. That's really, 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 really important. And it's not that girls don't, but there's a different qualitative difference when boys and men use the B word than when girls use the B word or when women use the B word. Because again, there is a dominant subordinate relationship in our society between men and women because we live in a patriarchal society. So the second term is misogyny. And you already have a rape culture handout, but I wanted to give you a definition, and I want to make sure that you have that handy as we're going through here. Misogyny is the hostile contempt for women, right? But it's more than just this internalized hatred of women, this hostile contempt. It's actually this controlling and punishing women who challenge male dominance, right? So that's really important. Often people talk about misogyny in a very individualistic way, that there are these individual men who just grow up and, they've got mom issues and they learn to hate women. But misogyny is a social system as well, right? So it's not just individualized, just like patriarchy is not an individual man, right? It's a socio-political system. Misogyny is a socio-political system and an environment where women constantly face hostility and hatred because we're women. That's what misogyny does. So it's this, when women or girls have the audacity to challenge male dominance and to challenge patriarchy, those women have to be controlled and punished. That's what misogyny is. So if you think about it, misogyny enforces sexism. Sexism is the ideology that justifies patriarchal relations. Misogyny is the enforcer of that particular ideology. That's how I want you to think about it, okay? Now, again, rape culture is an environment that normalizes this violence, this sexual and gender violence against girls and women through a number of practices, including this misogynistic social norms, victim blaming, rape myths, and sexual objectification. And so this is from Katz, who you will read in Unit 4. And now would be a good time to pull out your rape culture pyramid that's on ReggieNet, but if you got a chance, I hope you printed it out, to look over the way that misogyny and rape culture are interconnected, right? Because they are a part of the way that sexism operates within a patriarchal society. So Godner touches on these a little bit, but I want to make sure that you have clear, articulate vocabulary for what misogyny is and for what rape culture is and how language plays a role in that. So her essay, essentially what she did in intervening when her boys were in her classroom were using the B word, she's trying to articulate to you that when boys are using the B word, it's not arbitrary. They're not just being boys. That's toxic masculinity, and that has to be interrupted, because using the B word as a boy and as a man is an expression of domination, humiliation, and control over girls and women. When the B word is used by boys and men, sexism is normalized through language and action and inaction, depending upon where you stand on it. And also hegemonic masculinity is normalized. So a society in which manhood, or the notion of becoming a man, is all about conquering and violence, that ultimately will destroy us. That is not healthy. And also when boys use the B word, rape culture is normalized and reproduced. So her main points in this essay that I hope you got, and I hope it made you reflect and think and also challenge about the words that you use and who uses what words around you, is that language is a significant factor in normalizing sexism. And remember that sexism, what is it? It is an ideology, right, that justifies patriarchal relationships. And so if we want to eliminate sexism, we also have to pay attention to the language that we use. And when boys and men are using the B word, they are expressing domination, humiliation, and control over girls and women. So Godner, as an educator, is telling you, as an adult, as someone who's going to be working with other people in the world, whether you're a teacher or not, that we have a responsibility to interrupt sexist language and behavior when it happens. Particularly educators, particularly folks who are working with children. It's very important, because educators have to develop a set of strategies, not to just say, hey, don't say that word, but explain what sexism is, and particularly help boys and girls to unlearn it. We can make and scale these things for folks who are in 1st grade, 5th grade, 12th grade, and 26th grade. But we have to be able to interrupt this sexist language and call it sexist language. So if it's on Twitter, if it's in the media, if it's at home, if it's at work, if it's at the gym, call it what it is. Sexist language. Using the B word and confronting sexism on the fly, this is a part of that, is confronting the language. And so the last thing here, she kind of touches on it, but it needs to be restated because it's important, particularly for boys and men, is that boys and men have to make a commitment to make different choices. They have to unlearn hegemonic masculinity. They have to unlearn sexism and stop using sexist language, because if they don't, they're going to continue to perpetuate sexism as a part of patriarchy. And really, they have to help end rape culture, right? And so the other really key thing is that we have a lot of really important groups in society, in our peer culture, who we hang out with, what we do. And you'll learn in Unit 6 that our culture, we definitely are taught, and in institutions, we're taught to hang out with folks that are of the same gender. So boys and men have a big responsibility to prevent other boys and men from using sexist language. That is on men. Boys and men must do that. And really, it's men with power who are older who need to be not just saying, hey, 11-year-old, hey, 8-year-old, don't talk like that, but explaining to them what sexism is. And not just, oh, you shouldn't say that because girls are great. No, that's not enough, right? We're not talking just about gender equality. We're talking about the way that we live in a society where girls and women are deemed less than men and boys. There's a power relationship there. And so it's on boys and men to prevent other boys and men from using that sexist language. So Godner's really putting a call to all of us to say, hey, if we want to end this monster, we want to smash the patriarchy, and we want to eliminate sexism, a big key factor in that is the language that we use. And so we have a responsibility to interrupt this language and the behavior when it happens. But again, not to just say, hey, shut up, don't say that, but to explain, particularly to young people, to young boys and girls, and folks of all different gender expressions, what sexism is, what different roles we play based on our gender, and the historical factor of sexism and patriarchy, because the only way we're going to dismantle it is if we prevent it and if we unlearn it.